Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Charmatz. I am so excited about this show today. Many of you know Laura Jones for her many, many years as a political reporter and host with various media outlets around New Jersey. She is currently the host of New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones right here on the On New Jersey Network. You can also see her on MeTV. I have had the great pleasure of calling Laura my friend for many years, and I'm so thrilled she is joining us now. Thank you so much for being here, Laura.
Ivy, thank you so much for having me. And that was a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Well, it's going to get better. You ready? I
I'm ready.
remember
Bring
I
it.
was I was trying to think of moments when like the moment that I realized how talented you were. And I remember this was years ago. We were both working at News 12 New Jersey. It was one of the first times that I had been told that I was going to be producing something political. One of the first times, and politics can be a little overwhelming to understand. And we were actually in the ladies' room. I don't know if you remember this. We were in the ladies' room, and someone else came in to ask you a question about one of the state races, and you were getting ready, and you just you put your eyeliner down, and you were like, "Here's what's happening. This person thinks this person thinks this, da 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 da," and you went through the whole thing. You said at the end, these are the three differences between them, and that's it. And I remember standing there thinking that makes so much sense. I get it. I get it. You've just always had that ability to do that.
Oh, Ivy, thank you so much. And what's funny is when you talk about your first time going out and producing something political, when I was offered this job in Trenton as the Trenton Bureau State House reporter, I was really overwhelmed myself thinking, I don't know politics. What's the difference between an assemblyman, a senator? It was really intimidating, but luckily I had some great mentors along the way, people I shared my office with. I shared it with some members of the Star Ledger, which is no more. But I listened. I had a curiosity, and I was able to finally realize this isn't that complicated, and it touches every layer of our life. And then I started to get excited once people would explain things to me. And I'll give you a quick example. One of my first big stories was Governor Christie Whitman's budget address. And she was giving the budget address, let's say at 3 o'clock, finished at 4 o'clock, had to be on live at 5 o'clock for a budget that was probably 1,000 pages long. And I'm panicked. I don't know, how am I going to explain an entire state budget in 90 seconds? And this reporter from the Star Ledger, Dan Weissman's his name, sitting in the back, he's like, Laura, I'm going to give you the secret to a really good budget story. You know what the secret is? This is my Dan Weissman impersonation.
Yeah,
Never
it's a good one.
mention a number, right? Never mention a number. And I said, I don't get it. What do you mean never mention a number? He's like, well, what's the most important thing about this budget? I said, well, it's the biggest in state history. He said, well, there's your headline. And then he said, what else is there about it? I'm like, well, most of the money is going to education. He goes, okay, that's your second point. And then what else? I'm like, well, the rest is being split between A, B, and C. He's like, okay, there's your story. I'm like, oh, okay. And that really helped me put it in perspective and context. And I got excited. And I delivered that with a lot of enthusiasm that I hope connected with the viewer. So that's what I try and do with all my political stories is take away a lot of the rhetoric, the big multi-syllable words that people try and put out there,
Yeah.
and make it relatable so people understand. And I'm not afraid to ask, sometimes what does that mean questions. That's what I
Right.
try
So,
to do.
but you said something interesting that I don't even think I knew. You didn't intend to be a political reporter?
Well, I started out at a small low-power TV station, WZBN, based in Mercer County. When the Trenton Bureau came open, I knew the girl who was leaving that position at News 12, and I was, very interested in moving up from my smaller station to, a bigger station. So it was a Trenton Bureau. So half of it was the Trenton beat. The other part was State House reporting. And I was really nervous about that. But they gave me a chance. And 25 years later, I think it worked out.
Here we are, and here we are. What
Let's jump
made you know you
right.
wanted? What made you know you wanted to be a reporter? Was that something you always wanted to do?
So when I went to college, I figured out sometime in high school, there was somebody else going away to college, a couple years older than me, and I had really kind of looked up to her. And she was going to study communications, and I was like, yeah, I think that's what I want to do. So I went into college. Back then, you didn't have to declare a major until your junior year. But my freshman year, I was looking through my classes, and I went to meet with my advisor, and I said, well, I want to be a reporter. And this is in the 80s, which is kind of dating myself. And he said, no, you don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, excuse me? He's like, you don't want to do that. It's too hard. You're a woman.
Oh,
Do you want to wake up in the middle of the night and cover this plane crash, this, that, the other? He said, you should go out and be a model. I went back to my roommate and I'm crying my eyes out like, so then for the next couple of years, I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do?
yeah.
I put too much into what that advisor said. So then I got a general communications degree. Out of college, I went and worked at a daycare. Then I went worked retail. And then one morning I woke up. I was 25 years old. I said, you know what? I want to be a reporter. And I just moved up to the area. I turned on the TV, wrote down every single station that there was, and started calling and seeing if there were any entry level positions. Finally, I stumbled upon NJN, New Jersey Network, which is no more either. And I said, do you have any entry level positions, internships, anything? They said, well, you're 25 years old, you're out of college. No, but if you want to come volunteer here, feel free. So I did. I took that opportunity and I made myself necessary. And that's how I ended up finding a job because somebody from the local TV station, WZBN, came in and did a story on their political reporter, Michael Aaron, who has sadly passed last year. And I said, hey, are you hiring? And they hired me. So here
Did
I
you ever
am.
get back in touch with the advisor and say, haha,
Oh,
I'm a
I
reporter?
didn't.
Oh,
Right? Well, because I blocked him out of the mental data bank. But no, I didn't. But I should. I should
you,
let, the College of Communications know. By the way, he was wrong. I was right. But that's it. You got to trust
when
your
I
gut,
think,
you know?
well, so that's what I was going to say. But for the fact that you listened to yourself, you might not have had this amazing career.
Yeah, it's incredible. When a door opens, walk through it. And again, like
Right.
I said, I woke up one morning and I remember it so vividly. I'm like, all these other things I'm trying out, these careers where you can make some decent money. I was looking in sales. I'm looking at that. There were sales positions that came with a company car and with all kinds of perks. I wasn't getting the jobs and, I was working in retail, didn't love it. And I was like, wait, well, if I don't love this, why am I doing it? So I did keep the
Yeah.
retail job in the beginning while I was volunteering at New Jersey Network. But then ultimately I got this job making $25 a story. Um, and and then it grew because I just kept giving content. I just kept, more and more stories. And, when I look back, I never would have imagined because I didn't do well in English. Like English was one of my more difficult classes. I did well in math. But English, I struggled. But when you talk about storytelling, that isn't necessarily what you're learning in a classroom. And I will tell you, that advisor might have been onto something, because he took an assessment of me. He's like, well, you should be a model. Well, maybe that's because models are out in front of people. Maybe
Right.
models aren't afraid to get up and to do something. Maybe he was picking up on something. Maybe there was something to that in the analysis that they gave me back then. But I love telling stories. I love connecting with people. And my dad, I'm an only child. He loved, he had a hobby of photography, loved taking pictures. So, it was kind of meant to be.
It was for sure meant to be. And over that time, since then, you have covered some of the biggest stories, I would say, in New Jersey politics. You've certainly interviewed some of the biggest names. What are some of the stories and the interviews that stand out the most to you?
Oh gosh, so many, so many.
Yeah.
One of the big ones that I will never forget is when I actually was on maternity leave. My very first day of maternity leave is when Jim McGreevey came out and gave the "I'm a Gay American" speech. And I'm out to lunch with somebody, and my phone starts. I'm starting. This is back in 2004. I'm starting to get text messages. I'm missing phone calls, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? And then I start hearing things like Jim McGree is going to have a press conference. thinking, what? No, okay, something's up. And then as he went on, and I'm watching that story again, 9 months pregnant, about to give birth any day, I'm yelling and screaming at the TV. One, the New Jersey Press Corps, there were inklings. It wasn't necessarily a well kept secret. It wasn't something people reported on back then, though. Um, you know, but what really struck me about the Jim McGreevy story is the Nationals got it wrong. They were focusing on Jim McGreevy's gay. Well, the real story was he put people who weren't qualified on his payroll, and that was a conflict of interest. They got that story wrong. So that certainly stands out in my mind. But it isn't my favorite story. Would you like me
What's
to
your
tell you
favorite?
your favorite
Yes,
story?
please, please.
So my favorite story actually goes back to when I first started, and again, somebody was like, "Don't take yourself too seriously," or this really isn't. What we do doesn't matter. And I took offense to that because, well, at the time, this particular story hadn't happened, but that kind of stuck with me. Like, it's TV. What we do really doesn't matter. Okay, I can kind of see that. But I went out and I did a story with an organization called Homefront. Homefront is based in Mercer County. They're an organization that helps the working poor, families who are working, but because of their circumstances, they're not able to afford a home of their own. They can't even afford rent. They don't have credit. So they housed these families in motels, one-room motels along the Route 1 corridor along in Trenton. And they had a back to school drive. Most TV stations wouldn't really give a lot of thought to covering a back to school drive. It's maybe a what they'd call like a VOSOT, video on sound on tape, SOT video, and a sound bite, of. And Homefront is raising money for this,
Right.
but I did a full story on it, and two things stuck out. One, I was watching as they were helping, some of these families, and there was a man, this man, a single dad, and you could tell he was like working construction, real tough guy, and like I saw him breaking down in tears when they were giving his daughter a backpack. Their goal was to give every child in Mercer County new sneakers and a backpack. So I'm doing the story and then I'm promoting, hey, they still need a lot of donations. The next day, after my story aired, somebody from Homefront called me and they said, Laura, I want to let you know somebody gave us a call and said, you know what? I saw that story. And when I was a kid, I was the one who didn't have sneakers. I didn't have what I needed to go back to school. So I'm writing you a check, and every student in Mercer County is getting sneakers and a backpack. And I'm getting chills because what we do does make a difference. It does. So,
Yeah.
and is that the biggest story? No. Is that the biggest person? No. But that still lives in my heart and my soul today.
No, and I think that for those of us who have had the honor of telling stories like that, those are the ones that I think we remember the most because they are truly the most impactful, and it gives us that sense that we're making a difference and that we're trying to make the world a little bit of a better place. So I'm with you on that. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more. I want to talk about your life outside of politics, outside of being a political reporter and a host as well. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Big Little Stories. Laura, you mentioned before one of the stories you were telling about the way we used to cover politics, or the way politics used to be covered. I just wanted to ask you, how do you see how that's changed? Because definitely even in just our careers, in our career lifetimes, there's definitely been a very distinct change in how we talk about politics, how we cover politics, and what we expect of people who are covering politics.
Yeah, one of the things that strikes me in the beginning when I was first hired at News 12 and was being the political reporter is the way a newscast was structured. You and I know this, but the audience may not. You have an A block, a B block, a C block, a D block, a G block, right? And A block is where your lead stories are. And typically politics would be pushed down to the second block or the middle of the show because it wasn't necessarily lead material. Now more than ever, people are realizing politics, it affects every aspect of our life. life, whether we want to listen to it or not. It affects our wallet. It affects where we live, our healthcare, our future. So I'm definitely seeing a shift in that, and particularly in New Jersey. I mean, it's just a very political state. Anything that you do, there's always kind of a connection to politics, and that's what I love being able to tell and share with people to explain. Here's the headline, but here's what's going on behind the scenes, or here's what that may mean. With more and more organizations cutting back, not having local reporters, we're really getting away from that. The best way to become engaged and informed as a viewer or a reader, however you're consuming your news, is often through that local reporter. You're living in that community, so that's where you get the best information. So, for better or worse, if you have a cell phone and an internet connection, you can put yourself as a reporter. Which is good in getting information out there, but not everybody has the training and that depth of knowledge. And it doesn't have to do with age. I've seen, people in their 60s who can maybe read a prompter, but they don't understand that. And I've seen very young people, really understand and get that context and perspective when they present a story and explain a little bit more behind the headline. So it's an industry that's definitely changing. Politics is leading all types of newscasts, news hours. And now more than ever, I think it is so important to, have people who do have a little bit more perspective, so things don't get blown so out of proportion. And a lot of times reporters, when they don't have experience, they'll just regurgitate whatever press release somebody has put out. Or an organization just doesn't have the manpower or resources, so they put something out. And that puts a lot of work on the viewer to have to go back and verify, well, where did this information come from? Nobody has time for that. People don't have time for that, And we know, even that's why our packages in the news are short, because they've got the TV on there. They're cooking, they're getting ready for school, they're getting ready to head out. It might be background noise, so we try and keep it a little bit more and concise. So it's definitely more challenging now more than ever.
Well, and I'll say too, especially in politics, although I think we're seeing this in more things now, but particularly in politics, the idea of truly being unbiased and really just reporting the facts is maybe a little bit harder to find. But I will tell you also, and this is, I think, one of the things that so many of us have always admired about you, is you were always the person that everyone always returns a call from Laura Jones, because you are so fair and you do treat the issue as the issue, and not, you never played favorites. You never imparted your own biases into what you were doing, and I think that speaks to not only your work but also why you've had such a long and successful career.
Thank you. And I really think that is the easiest part of being a reporter, is don't give your opinion. Don't make it about yourself. Let the other people have their time. Let them speak. You don't have to agree with it. And I think a lot of reporters, or some reporters, will get out there and feel like they need to make a name for themselves, or they have to give themselves now a viral moment, instead of just saying, well, here's what people had to say. Candidate A says this, candidate B says that, candidate C says the other. Let them have their say. Again, you don't have to agree with it. There are ways, and sometimes it may upset viewers, but if you approach it that way, these aren't my words, they're somebody else's words. Now you take that information and do with it what you want. So that's how I try to look at it.
Well, so Laura, I want to talk to you also because we know you as a fabulous reporter and host for so many years, but you're also a mom. You have 3 amazing children. I know, and you speak about this publicly, and I wanted to spend a little time talking with you about this, because there were some challenges that you had when your kids were younger. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because how you navigated through that process, I think is very inspiring for people to hear.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was a little bit late in life mother. It took me quite a while to have my daughter, and then suddenly I had 3 babies in 3 years and in 1 month. And I knew that there were things that didn't quite feel right. And ultimately, it took many, many years to finally realize they were all autistic, all somewhere on the autism spectrum. So even getting to that point where I finally got the diagnosis, my daughter was in 3rd grade, my one son, he was younger when he was getting conflicting diagnoses. But when I finally figured it all out, Oh, this is why it's so exceptionally hard. I think being a reporter, and then for a brief year, I did work in state government for 1 year. I worked for the New Jersey Economic Development Authority in communications. So I got to see a little bit behind the scenes. I think all of those things helped me become a better mother, a better advocate for my children, because their challenges, you have to understand education, healthcare, advocacy, legal, there's so much that was being thrown at me. And I always wanted to work throughout it. And, some people, and raising children under the best of circumstances is a full-time job. Then trying to balance it with a career, I definitely had to take a step back. But, that also kind of helped me give me my sanity. It also helped me navigate. It also, I didn't take whatever people said necessarily as an answer. I knew how to push back and ultimately get my kids the services they need. Now I have a daughter who's 20, a son who's 18, and one who's 17, and they're doing really well. They will always have challenges and struggles, but they're doing amazing. And and I know how to work my way around the system. And for so many families, because autism is so prevalent in New Jersey and everywhere, but particularly in New Jersey, we have some of the highest numbers. It breaks my heart for parents who are struggling out there or who may not know. I know a little bit of what I'm doing, and it is a struggle. So that's why I am always very outspoken when it comes to advocacy for my children and special education.
And so what do you tell parents who are going through some of the challenges that you went through, who may not have the deep knowledge that you have of how things work? You've done so much as an advocate. How do you share that with other people? What do you tell them to do?
I try to listen. I get fired up about it. But I try to listen. And the most important thing I tell them is you're not crazy. You haven't lost your mind. And you're a good person. You're not failing your child, because it is tremendous to even process, a diagnosis. And it's, because autism, it's kind of considered invisible. People, well, your child looks okay. They don't look like they have a disability. What do you mean? Oh, they act perfectly fine at school. Well, yes, that's the masking. So I try and listen to parents. I give them my cell phone numbers. I say, if you want to call Vent anytime, just let me know, because it is very, very difficult to go and challenge a teacher. And it isn't a dig on teachers, but when something isn't right, sometimes teachers aren't allowed. I know they're not allowed to speak up because they're not a doctor. They can say, well, maybe something isn't right. And it took me a while to figure out the code, because in kindergarten, a teacher said, something's not right. I can't quite figure it out about your daughter. Well, it took until third grade. I thought she had a learning disability before they finally said, no, she's autistic and she has learning disability and she has all these other things happening too. So I try to listen. I try and help guide and to tell them to take one step at a time. And in no way, if anybody's listening out there, in no way are you failing your child. I have to listen to this listen to this advice myself, because you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you didn't study education. Your job is to be a parent. And a doctor one time told me that when I said I'm failing my kids. He's like, I'm sorry, did you have an MD next to your name? No. He's like, did you go to law school? No. It's like, and did you study special ed in school? No. He's like, so how are you failing your child? Your job is to love them and to speak out for them, but cut yourself a break, cut yourself some slack. So that's what I try and tell parents to do.
Well, and I know firsthand that you have amazing children who are all doing remarkably well, and that is in part they are great kids, but also they have a fantastic mom, and I know you've done a lot to get them there. Laura, we end each show with the same questions. We call them 3 big little questions. Are you ready for them?
Okay, I'm ready.
Right.
Let's go.
All right, Laura, how do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
Ooh, how do I get myself in a bad mood? I laugh. I think of something funny. I phone a friend. There are certain TV shows and sayings that will just crack me up every single time. South Park,
I'm
Curb
trying
Your
not to repeat any
Enthusiasm.
of them right
That
now, but
makes
yes,
me
okay,
laugh.
yes. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Go-to karaoke song. I default to Kate. That's my daughter, Kate. I default to Kate. I'm not taking the microphone. I use the microphone enough. I'll default to Kate, who will sing anything Judy Garland as beautifully as Judy Garland.
Oh, Kate has the most beautiful voice. What's your favorite spot in New Jersey, or one of your favorite spots in New Jersey?
Ooh, favorite spot in New Jersey, anywhere near the Delaware River. There's something about being by the water that's just so peaceful, especially Friday night fireworks that they have. I love, being by the river, seeing those fireworks, walking through the shops, through the local restaurants. It's just, it's a little slice of heaven.
Laura, I just love you. I'm so grateful for
Oh,
your friendship for all these years and for
thank
all the
you.
work that you do. And thank you so much for joining me today and having this conversation. And obviously, people who
Yeah.
are listening to this know that you're on New Jersey as well. So we'll look
And
forward to
I
seeing
am
more
who I
on there.
am because of people like you behind the scenes as well, Ivy. I've had tremendous support, and you are among those people who have helped me along the day and our extraordinary producer. If we had more time, we could go into some of our fun stories as well. But you're
We're
very
out of
special
time.
and important
We're
for
out
me.
of time. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. I will talk to you soon, my friend. Thank you so much. And that will do it for this week's Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Charmatz. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Big Little Stories Show. I will talk to you next time. Bye bye.